Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Warrior Stories podcast, where we deep dive into the unique health journeys of everyday people like you and me. Health is often taken for granted, but it is not the default setting for a lot of us. So that's why we want to encourage people to keep fighting, keep searching for answers, and we want people to know that they are not alone. If any of that resonated with you, then please click that follow, subscribe, whatever button, depending on where you're watching or listening to this. That way you'll always know when we have a new episode coming out. Now today, I am thrilled to have Jennifer Soames with us. Jennifer is a traumatic brain injury survivor and advocate, a published author, a former licensed holistic health practitioner, and a certified yoga instructor. Lot going on. I had to coach myself to remember all those things before I got started. She's very passionate about helping those affected by traumatic brain injuries so that they get the information, the care, and the support that they need so that they can live their fullest, best lives. And I think one of the things that's particularly compelling about Jennifer is that she understands all of this firsthand. So she understands the pain, the grief, the frustration, the fear, because there's so much that goes on with a traumatic brain injury other than just the initial trauma. It doesn't stop there, and she really understands that. So whether it's, dealing with a chronic or debilitating illness, becoming disabled, losing your sense of self and your purpose, or even post-trauma growth, which people don't really talk about very often, she understands firsthand what that's like. And she's just a phenomenal, at the end, I'm obviously going to promote a bunch of her information because if you get a chance to read her blog, I highly, highly suggest you do so. Outside of her teaching and her writing, Jennifer is just a cool person. She likes being in nature, traveling, spending time with her husband, family, friends, and animals in the Seattle, Washington area. Thank you so much for joining us, Jennifer. How are you today?
Thanks so much, Hannah. I am doing okay today.
I said this a little bit before we got started, but I don't like it, but it's just kind of entertaining. I check in with everybody before we get started, and everybody kind of takes a breath, and they're like, you know what? Today's an okay day, or today's a good day. And if you've been listening or watching the podcast for a while, you know that we're an interesting group of people, and it's just we try to just make space for each other and say, today's a brain fog day, or today's a bad chronic pain day. And it always kind of makes me laugh because I'm like, nah, man, this is your crowd. These are your people.
Excellent. Well, then I will be truly authentic and say it's still morning at my time, and mornings are the hardest for me. So I'm kind of coming out of my brain fog, which is a daily occurrence, and pretty tired today, which you'll learn more about. But yeah, definitely feeling it this morning. So if my words get a little jumbled or if I take extra pauses, that's why. So I'm here just showing up and happy to be here with you today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, and when you and I connected and I was, doing my background research because I'm neurotic that way.
Love it.
Thanks. I was just so moved by the way that you balance the complexities of traumatic brain injuries, because obviously there's so many mixed emotions. It's trauma,
Mm-hmm.
it's physical, emotional, mental trauma.
Right.
And then there's also the good, growing from that, coming from that. And I feel like you balance the complexity of that so beautifully and so authentically. So I'm just very excited for you to get to share your story with us today.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. It's definitely not an easy journey. Some days I feel like I go through it with more grace than others.
I think that's to
But
be
that's
expected.
just right. That's just the reality of it. There are days where I feel like, yeah, I've got this. Like I'm good. Doing the best I can for today, and it's really not that bad, and enjoying life. And then other days where it's like, life sucks. I hate this. I'm so done with this. That was me yesterday. So I don't have it all together either, and that's okay. But yeah, I'm happy to share my story because I know, just like you said in your introduction for your mission, it's one that we share in common of just letting people know that first and foremost, they're not alone, because life with, whether it's a traumatic brain injury or any other kind of chronic health challenge, it can be really lonely, and it can feel
Absolutely.
like no one understands you. People don't get it because, of course, sometimes doctors don't believe you either.
Oh gosh.
And so knowing that you're not alone, and that even if you're not going through the exact same experience with the exact same diagnoses as someone that you have on your show, there's a lot of things that people will relate to. And that's the most important thing, is creating this space for knowing that you're not alone, and that there are resources and there are people who get you. So I
Absolutely.
so appreciate what you're doing, because that's totally my mission too. So yeah, two peas in a pod here.
Awesome. Thank you. That's so awesome to hear. Well, let's kind of jump into it because I and it's so I don't really know how to explain it. I was going to say it's so funny, but it's not funny at all. That's just a saying because I'm from the Midwest. Um, I feel like not a lot of people understand the complexities of traumatic brain injury and just how deeply it can impact your life. So I'm excited to get into your story. I'll let you kind of introduce your story, how it makes the most sense for you. So tell us kind of your background and kind of what happened.
Sure. So when people find out that I live with a traumatic brain injury, they always want to know, well, what happened? So let's start there, so that I can satisfy that curiosity to the listeners out there. So it was the week before Thanksgiving in 2013. And I have always been an avid horse person. I was one of those horse crazy girls growing up, involved in horses as a teenager, and it hasn't stopped. So I was at that time riding pretty regularly, and a good friend of mine was also my trainer, and I would take lessons with her, dressage lessons, which is a form of English riding. And I was out there on this beautiful Friday, the week before Thanksgiving, and riding a horse in a lesson that I had not ridden before.
Mm.
And so we're going along in our lesson, going pretty well, asking the horse to do some pretty difficult things, which he did not appreciate. But, we were getting through it. And all of a sudden, she spooked
Mm.
for no apparent reason. But in any case, she completely hopped right. I came off left. And no matter how good of a rider you are or think you are, sometimes physics gets the best of you. So I came off and landed on my back hard, according to my friend and trainer, wearing my helmet, of course. And I didn't lose consciousness, but I couldn't see, which is the strangest thing. And I don't know how long that lasted. Might have been a few seconds, may have been a minute, but I totally knew where I was. I could hear my friend saying, "Don't move," across the arena. And once my vision came back, it's the very strangest thing. It's a very odd experience to not be able to see and then suddenly get that back.
That sounds
But
terrifying.
it was weird. But once we established that I didn't have any broken bones, I did what most of us crazy horse people do: get back on,
Oh my
because
gosh.
it's
That
important
yep.
when when
That's
physically
every
possible,
horse person I know.
right?
Absolutely.
It's important so that you end on a good note and
Hmm.
don't leave in a kind of negative or like traumatized state. And so I was shaken up, of course, and we just ended on a good note. Had a really easy like 15 minutes, and my head was hurting, but I just thought like, oh, I'm just gonna have some neck pain and head pain for a day or two. And I have a background as a licensed body worker. I was in practice for 14 years, 12 of which owning my own practice. And so I had and have a lot of colleagues. And so from the barn, I called one of my colleagues, a craniosacral practitioner, and I said, "Oh, I hit my head. I need to see you." And she said, "Oh, I can see you tonight." And I said, "Well, I really just want to go home, but how about, tomorrow morning?" So we scheduled that, thinking that like, oh, this is no big deal. I had to drive myself home about an hour, mostly freeway driving.
Ooh.
And I got increasingly like ridiculously tired driving home. So out of character and so abnormal that I was like, oh crap, I have a concussion. And the only way I knew that was because when I was back in massage school way back when, I wrote a paper about the most common horseback riding related injuries. And the number one was concussion.
Yeah.
So that was the only way, honestly, that I knew that was a thing, really. And that was likely what I was experiencing was thanks to a paper I had to write, or chose to write anyway. And so I had the worst night, hopefully knocking on wood here, of my life that night. Just so much pain. I couldn't lie flat. My poor husband, like scouring the internet, trying to figure out what over the counter pain medication he might give me. And of course, did it cross my mind to go to the ER? It did, but I was more concerned about the cost of it, even with medical
Right.
insurance. Yeah. As if those listening are in the United States, you can likely relate to that.
I think
And so I was like, no, yeah. I just was like, no, I'm not going to go. So I got through the night and saw my colleague and another practitioner for some treatment the next morning. And my colleague, who was a good friend of mine, and she basically convinced me to go to the ER to get a CT scan to make sure I didn't have any internal bleeding. And so I was like, okay, for you, I'll go. Still more concerned about the financial costs than like the cost to me, right?
Isn't that just a cosmic joke? It's just horrifying that we have to deal with that.
I know it's so wrong, and yet that's the reality that so many people face.
Absolutely.
And I was one of them, and so I was like, okay, fine, I'll go. And so thankfully, no internal bleeding, but was diagnosed with a concussion, which I want to make very clear that a concussion is a traumatic brain injury. The terms are used interchangeably. It's like saying trash or garbage. And so they gave me a 2-page handout and said that I would be fine in 2 weeks. Well, I can tell you, over 9 years later, now being legally disabled and having a long slew of related diagnoses, that they were wrong.
Yeah,
They
you
were
don't
flat
say.
out wrong. No. But I will say that statistically speaking, 80% of folks who incur a concussion go back to, quote, normal after a couple weeks to a few months. But I've always been a super high achiever. And so, somehow I ended up in that top 20%. just the way it
just
worked
striving
out.
for perfection.
Totally. But unfortunately, this was not one to strive to be
Yeah,
in that
not the
top
category
20%.
you want to be in.
No, but even so, with all the other diagnoses that have piled on, it seems like whether the percentage goes from like 4 to 25%, I always seem to be in it. So I'm consistent that way, at least.
I mean, it's
Oh,
important though for people to realize that yes, the majority of concussions you're going to be okay.
mhm.
I've had a concussion and thankfully I haven't had any long lasting ramifications from that. But you can't always count on being in the majority.
Right.
Like so this stuff happens, and it happens more often than I think people really want to believe. So
It really does. And most people think of like military personnel, athletes, especially when it comes to brain injury, particularly traumatic brain injury. But it's your neighbor who slipped on the ice and hit their head. It's your parent who fell in the shower. It's someone else who, stood up too quickly when they were working on the car and hit their head on, the roof of it or something. And it happens to kids too. So it's a lot
oh
more common than
gosh.
people realize. And actually, uh, the statistics that I found back in 2017-18 was that TBI occurs about almost twice as much as, and I want to say it was actually cancer as a whole in the United States. It's in my book. I'll have
Wow.
to verify that, but it was staggering. It was like 1.75 to 1. And that's for those that are diagnosed. And the way that has been collected statistically is diagnosed TBI through hospitalization, ER visits, and death. So that
And
doesn't
so many
account for
people
all
never
those.
go to the
Right.
doctor.
Exactly. Or don't have access to medical care, or there's this very much this walk it off mentality of like, oh, it's fine. You'll be fine. Right. Because that's what I was under the impression of, was like, oh, I'll be fine if I just kind of like, take it easy for a few days and then, oh, no big deal. But after a couple months, getting through the holiday season, that was a bit challenging. But especially a couple months later, not being able to sleep. And I mean, getting like 3 to 4 hours of sleep every single night. And for anyone who's dealt with insomnia, has had a newborn baby, any reason that disrupts your sleep, you know why it is used as torture. Sleep deprivation.
Absolutely.
It totally is. And that, between that and this kind of explosiveness with my emotional state, like not being able to regulate my emotions, my poor husband, he's put up with so much. But those things really let me know that something is wrong. Like, I am not right. This is not okay. And I haven't been given any resources from the ER or from my primary physician that I followed up with a couple weeks later per the ER instructions. I didn't have any instructions on like what to do or who to see, what could help, or to even be aware of things to look out for.
That's
Because if they had
terrifying.
said,
Oh
yeah,
man.
if they had said, well, you're likely going to be just fine, but if you notice this, 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 and this, or if these persist, then you might want to follow up with, for example, these folks. If they had done something like that, it would have completely changed the course of particularly the next few months, the next few years. But that's not what happens most of the time, I think. And so thankfully, being in the health industry and knowing people who knew people, I was eventually kind of pointed in the right direction to see different folks. But even that took a lot of effort. And over time, and with a lot of different help from different practitioners, things did start to get better to certain degrees. And then other things started popping up. Because like just when you think that you've got something kind of figured out, well, there's more to the story. Like, and wait, there's more. It's like a bad infomercial.
Something new now. Something so new and exciting,
Right.
and equally traumatizing.
Right. And when people think of traumatic brain injury, they often think of like headaches or cognitive challenges, memory problems, maybe changes in personality. All of those things are definitely symptoms thereof, but there are a lot more things that happen, even sometimes months to years later, that show up. And that's only if practitioners actually catch them and actually, diagnose them. So about a year later, I was doing fairly well. I still had difficulties with various things, light sensitivity, sound sensitivity, sleep still wasn't the best, but emotions were better. Still, like word recall, challenging, gibberish would come out of my mouth talking to clients. That was pretty bad. But then I started feeling symptoms of depression. And for me, having always been like a morning person, like at the gym or at the yoga studio by like 6 a.m., like 5-6 days a week, and this like super type A personality of like, go, and being a business owner and things, I was always like, go, go, go. And then to not be able to get out of bed for 2 hours.
This episode of the Warrior Stories podcast is made possible by Haka Life Nutrition. Haka Life Nutrition believes in a whole body health approach, from a strong mindset, making smart food choices, encouraging daily exercise, and supporting your body with quality supplements. Haka Life Nutrition produces quality of life supplements that support your joint health, support your muscles, keep your heart healthy, and keep your brain active. Head to hakalife.com/warrior to learn more and get exclusive discounts. That's hakalife.com/warrior. All right, now let's get back to the good stuff.
It was just like, this is not right. And so got that diagnosed and started on medication and things like that, but also had PTSD, because not only when I've been in the fall from the horse, but to add insult to injury, like quite literally, on the way home from the ER, we were just 3 miles shy of being home. I was passenger, of course, because I was in no condition to drive the day after coming off the horse. And we were going through an intersection. We had the green light, and a woman coming the opposite direction used poor judgment, and she turned left directly in front of us.
Oh
And my husband
gosh.
tried to avoid her, but again, physics didn't work for us. And so we hit, of course, my side, the passenger side of my car, into hers, and causing damage to my side. Like I couldn't open my passenger door. My husband thankfully was fine, but I was on the way home from the ER. I was still on prescription pain medication,
Not
and it
the
flared everything up.
Not that there's a good time to get hit by a car, but
No, but
after
25 hours after, yeah,
yeah.
25 hours about. But then also, it was almost exactly a year after being also passenger in another really bad car accident just a year prior. So PTSD symptoms definitely, and try to start getting all this addressed, seeing different practitioners and lots of appointments, getting overwhelmed trying to keep my business going while, because I'm sole proprietor. Like it's just me. I don't have anybody working for me, just me seeing clients, dealing with all this stuff, very fatigued, and all these appointments, sometimes daily, working with my functional neurologist at the time. So it was just a lot of overwhelm and trying to figure out what to do next. And uh, fast forward several years and to figure out like why my hormones suddenly kind of became really imbalanced and kind of always imbalanced. Getting diagnosed almost 3.5 years later with pituitary damage. The pituitary gland is this pea-sized gland that is kind of right between your eyebrows, kind of at the top of the bridge of your nose.
It may be small,
And
but boy, is it important.
oh, it's mighty, tiny and mighty, but it regulates a lot of your hormones. And if it doesn't produce a hormone itself, it produces the precursors to them so that it communicates with other organs in your body who also produce hormones. So this actually, I found out from my neuroendocrinologist that pituitary damage happens in about 40% of people with TBIs.
I had no
And
idea about that.
yeah, I didn't either at the time. And so it makes a lot of sense, given head and neck trauma, things like that. Because it's susceptible to injury with whiplash kind of stuff like that too.
I never would have thought of
And
that. Wow.
yeah, so it's like, okay, one more thing to deal with, and that's a constant roller coaster that is always changing, hard to regulate sometimes, and even getting a diagnosis 7 years later of dysautonomia, which is dysregulation of the autonomic nervous system. And that's the part of your nervous system that regulates things like your heart rate, your blood pressure, and a lot of the things that, autonomic, think of like automatic. So the things that are not really under our conscious control so much, that your body does just automatically, right? Autonomic nervous system. And I had that the whole time, but it took 7 years to get that diagnosis. And even just 6 weeks ago, exactly, related to all the whiplash injuries that I've had, finally got the diagnosis of craniocervical instability, which is basically ligament laxity in my neck caused from all these whiplash injuries. That has an effect on all these things too. So it's just like, no matter how educated I am, no matter how proactive I am, it seems like there's always more. And that's fine. But
But
oh
it's
yeah,
so
and one
much. It's
more,
just, oh,
right? And then the main thing that really just got progressively worse, no matter what I did, who I saw, any of that, is chronic fatigue syndrome. At first, I thought it was just the neurofatigue from the brain injury, but even after the depression symptoms got really, under control, and that was doing pretty well, it still now takes me about an hour to get out of bed every morning, just to have the energy physically to get out of bed. And then I go to the couch and I'm there for usually a couple hours. And when I was working and I cut back work, even fairly early on after my injuries, I cut back on clients to the best of my ability. But even then, it was hard. But I was trying to keep my business going, and nearly went bankrupt on all of my medical bills, even with health insurance, and it was very difficult. But in 2019, by then it had just gotten so bad that I was like, I can't do this anymore. I cannot I cannot tell my clients how important it is to take care of themselves and be a complete hypocrite by causing harm to myself, by pushing myself all the time, trying to provide for them and to be a good practitioner for them. And like, be in tears on the couch thinking of my busy schedule, even though I scaled back to only 3 clients a day, 3 times a week. Like, that's not very much. But I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I'm this is harmful, and I'm gonna cause more harm to myself if I keep trying to push.
I
And so, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I feel like that mentality you mentioned earlier of just walking it off, just dealing with it, and just and especially for anyone who has any sort of traumatic injury or chronic illness, like, there is this mentality of, I have to keep going. I have to
Mm-hmm.
just push through. I have to just
Mm-hmm.
be strong. I have to keep doing all these things. And sometimes your body or your brain is just like, I'm not, take me out, coach. I'm not in this game anymore, at least not for a little bit. And but I feel like it's so emotionally difficult to make that decision, to finally
Oh,
say,
yeah.
I need a break, or I need to step back, or I need to
Yeah.
cut down on my hours, or I need to just stay home, or hell, sometimes even just I need to get an extra hour of sleep, or I need to just
Mm-hmm.
sit and stare on the couch for an
Oh, yeah.
extra 20 minutes.
Oh,
Like,
yeah. Staring at the blank wall with my cat on my lap
yeah,
on the couch. Like, that's
yeah.
how I would spend many a morning.
And I feel like that moment of recognizing that that's what you need to do, and then actually doing it, that's so hard. And it's just because you want to push through, and you want to keep doing all the things, and you want to get back
Absolutely.
to normal, whatever normal might be. And it's just so hard to know that you need to do those things and to actually do it. Like when you were
Yeah.
describing, like, I need, being a hypocrite to my clients, that kind of thing. I was just like, man, I feel like if I were in that position, I would have tried to push through too, and I would have made all those same decisions. So
Ugh.
I,
And it was hard because I loved my work. I was skilled at what I did. I loved my clients, and I was really proud of the business that I had built up. It was a thriving practice, and it was what I had dreamed of creating for my practice. And so it was so hard at that moment to say, I can't do it anymore. I physically cannot do it. And my husband, thankfully, is incredibly supportive. Best human I could ever possibly have for a partner. And he said,
there's those
okay,
out there.
and so we talked about it and looked at, finances, and said, okay, like, we think we can make this work. And so I closed my practice on January 30th of 2020, which, in a way, is a bit, I feel like, dodging a bullet with the pandemic
I
hitting
was gonna say,
just
it's
like,
not like there was anything big going on that year or
no.
anything.
But I planned it back in August. We talked in August of 2019, and I made the announcement in September. So this was very much pre-planned. And I had clients who were still going through some work with me, and so I had to get through January to make sure that I was able to get through all the work with my clients that we had already planned. So otherwise, if I hadn't already had clients who were scheduled to be with me that whole time, I probably would have closed sooner. But it was just to make sure that they got the work that they needed, that I had promised them in our work together. So um, I ended up filing for disability later in 2020, realizing that, oh no, I am disabled. And
which is a
that whole
whole
process,
psychological
oh
mess.
that whole process is a whole other topic of discussion, but it's a horrible process. No one should have to go through it or fight as hard as anyone does to get approved. It took about 2 years and fighting
And
hard,
that's
and
good. Like,
that's fast. That's really
that's fast,
fast. Yeah.
which is
Um,
just ridiculous.
it's a horrible system. I am grateful for it, and at the same time, let's just say a huge opportunity for improvement all around. Um, Putting it in a nice way,
I'm gonna say that's
but
very kind of you.
try to be. There are a lot of, I could easily rephrase things in a not so constructive way, but um,
Well, I encourage our listeners, just because you've already written about this so beautifully on your blog. In the description, you will find a link, several links to different things for Jennifer. Go check out her blog. She has a particular blog about getting disability, and the term like congratulations. I
congratulations. Yeah,
I was like, that perfectly summarizes it. Like, congratulations that you finally got, qualified for disability, but
right,
also condolences because in some ways it still sucks. So
right.
I thought
It
that
still
was
sucks.
so
I
good.
mean, if I could be doing the work that I loved, I would. If I could be doing something else, I would, but I physically can't, and it's hard to come to terms with that. And sometimes it still is. I've thankfully done a lot of therapy, a lot of counseling, have great people supporting me that encourage me, but there are times where I would either like second guess, like, well, am I really disabled? Because I'll have
Oh
a good
gosh.
day, some good days, or maybe a good week. And it's like, really, like, am I really disabled? Because, like some
Am
other
I just
people who have
making
it
this
worse than I
up?
do. Yeah, especially the whole process where they try to basically invalidate you
Oh
at
yeah.
every turn. It
It
is
creates more
gaslighting. It's
mental
like
health problems. Absolutely.
it does, and it's like, wait, am I really? Like, is this
Maybe
all in my head? It's
maybe
like,
they're
yes,
right.
like it is all in my head because I have brain
You have
damage.
a
So
traumatic brain
yes,
injury.
exactly. But like second guessing myself there, and then like I would have a string of bad days where I could barely get off the couch, and it's like, oh yeah, yes. Um, and there's a lot of grief that goes around that, about all the things that I've lost in my life. Who I thought I was, a lot of communities that I was a part of, because I can't attend those things. Things like the gym community that I had, the yoga community that I had, because that's just not my life anymore. But there's always gifts in it too, right? There's a lot of things that suck about it. And yet, despite that, there are a lot of great things that have come out of it too. The relationships that I have developed because uh, this whole experience has commonalities with other people that I've met. Um, some of my closest friends now. One I met really and connected with because of a brain injury that they had. So, you get to meet people, and um, the empathy that I have developed because of this, like I have so much more empathy for people, I think, than I used to. And I think that made me a much better practitioner in my last many years of being a provider, because I understood a lot more what my clients were experiencing, especially with chronic pain. That's the majority of people came to me for relief from chronic pain. And it's like I understood the journey, even if, of course, our things weren't identical, but the journey had a lot of similarities. And I think that also was really reassuring for them, because they knew that I could empathize and that I got it, at least to a certain degree. And that, I think, completely changed my practice, to be honest, in a much better way. Um, but also now, like sharing all this, making sure that people know that this is all the stuff that can happen. This is all the stuff that does happen. and to let people know that like this stuff needs to be taken seriously. They can't have this walk it off mentality. And yet, even with this new normal that we have to learn to live with, because we can't go back.
No.
We can't go back to how we were or who we were. We can only move forward. And however that looks in any moment, it's going to be different from person to person, moment to moment. But, and that takes time, takes a lot of time. And there's no time frame on that. It's a continual process of coming to terms over and over again. But there are ways to move forward. There are ways to make this the best life that you can with a new normal.
I love
And
that.
a never changing normal too, because we're never the same on any given day. But there is hope in it, and hope not meaning that everything's going to go away and it's going to be rainbows and unicorns. And if that happens for people, great, woohoo! I'm thrilled for you. But it's really trusting that you are okay, that you will be okay, however long that takes, and knowing that people have different access to different resources and it's not an equal playing field. And I fully respect that and acknowledge that. It's not fair. But you work with what you have available to you, and you work with what you can do for yourself to the best of your ability to keep striving to make the most of your situation.
I need a moment. I love all the stuff that you just said so much. I feel like anyone who has had a traumatic injury of any kind, or who has a chronic illness or any sort of disability, will immediately understand what you're talking about. But I also feel like there's such a huge lesson for anyone who has a friend or a family member or a partner who has any of these experiences, because it's such a shame that it takes sometimes really tragic and traumatic things to happen to us for us to really learn that empathy and that humility.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there is nothing more humbling than having your body kind of betray you in some fashion. Um, and it really does teach you to connect with people in a very different way, in a much more
Mm-hmm.
open way and accepting way, because you really do understand that, oh my gosh, I'm dealing with something I never expected to. My life is not what it was. My body is not what it was. My mind is not what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe somebody else is also dealing with something, and I should give people space to feel and be however they need to, just because you never really know
Absolutely.
what someone's going through.
Right.
It's just,
And to honor their process, because we in our society, we always want people to be happy, which is great. I mean, that's wonderful. And at the same time, when people are going through things like this, especially chronic illness and all that comes with that, there are those bad days where you might just feel crappy. You might be just mentally like fed up. I was feeling that way yesterday. And, you just want someone to just witness that with you, to just be like, I know I don't get it. And I understand that that really sucks. And it does suck. It effing sucks. And I'm just going to be here with you. And, like, you don't need to try to cheer people up unless they ask you to. It's okay for people to feel what they feel. And our society is not really good at letting people feel all of the emotions. And even if it's someone that who experiences a chronic illness, even if it's, quote, an invisible disability or illness like my stuff, because I look normal, right? Anyone who looks at me would say, oh, wait, you look fine. Yeah,
looks can be
but you have no
deceiving.
idea. Exactly. Like, I can fake it. Oh, absolutely. I can fake it. I can pretend like I don't have any of this. But that's not true. So even if you don't understand it, even if it doesn't make sense to you, just hear people out and just be with them as they are.
I
And
love that.
you might just ask, well, tell me more about that. What's that like for you?
This episode of the Warrior Stories podcast is made possible by Haka Life Nutrition. Haka Life Nutrition believes in a whole body health approach, from a strong mindset, making smart food choices, encouraging daily exercise, and supporting your body with quality supplements. Haka Life Nutrition produces quality of life supplements that support your joint health, support your muscles, keep your heart healthy, and keep your brain active. Head to hakalife.com/warrior to learn more and get exclusive discounts. That's hakalife.com/warrior. All right, now let's get back to the good stuff.
And it's especially hard, as we talked about earlier, just kind of in passing, of like, there are providers who don't believe this stuff. Of course,
Absolutely.
Going through disability, they don't want to acknowledge it either. But it's hard when, even in the medical system, when people don't believe you and tell you that it's all psychosomatic. Because usually it's not. And even if they don't understand it, doesn't mean it's not real.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, okay. Let's change it up, because
Yeah. It's all heavy. It's like,
I have a
okay.
habit of like we get into it sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about management, because like there's some stuff that you go through that, like, you wake up and it just is what it is, and you're just gonna have to kind of deal with it.
Yep.
But what are some lifestyle things or management techniques and things that you do that help you manage, that help you, just get through the day? What kinds of things
Mm-hmm.
work for you?
Yeah. Just thinking on a normal average day for me, I would say, because I spend a lot of time here at home, my animals, they play a huge part in my life and my well-being. I currently have a rabbit and a cat. We had a corgi for 16 years, and she's no longer with us, but it was a bit of a zoo having three for a short while. But the animals have been such a huge part of my life, and just they make me smile, and sitting there on
I've
the
never seen
floor
them, and they're making me smile.
yeah, I can sit on the couch and have my cat on my lap, and for sometimes a couple hours in the morning, and it's wonderful to have the connection with animals. I've always been an animal person. I thought I was going to be a horse vet growing up, and even into college, but I went a different direction. But so animals have always been my thing. My husband is phenomenal. I have so much support from him, and I'm so grateful for that. And family members and friends. And even though, like, I don't get out much, there are just a few friends that check in periodically, pretty regularly, just even text messaging. So just having some kind of connection with other people that I know support me, and just are those folks who will just be with me however I'm feeling that day. But so those things help. And sometimes it is pretty lonely, especially because I am more extroverted. I like to be around people I know and like. So sometimes I do have to actually, like, reach out to friends, because it's like, no one's texting me today. I don't matter. I don't matter to anybody. No one cares about me.
I laugh just because I so get that.
Right.
I'm like, yep, right. I know exactly how that feels.
And so I'm like, okay, that's like, ask myself, is this true? No, it's not. It's not true. But actually having to then reach out to people saying, like, hey, can you send me a virtual hug? Things like that, because it's like, sometimes I just need to know that someone else can think of me at all, or have some kind of connection with me.
Absolutely.
One of the greatest gifts in this past year has been joining a TBI support group virtually. And we meet weekly. There's also a monthly group, most of the same folks, but that's been a wonderful addition, because it's people who get it, and all of our experiences are different, but there's so many common things that it's great. We just, get on Zoom every week and catch up. And sometimes there's strategic things that we're going to talk about. Other times it's just a free for all, but that's been a blessing. And trying to get in movement when I feel up to it, whether that's going for a walk around the neighborhood with my husband, or haven't been a yoga instructor. I'm on hiatus right now, but just doing a practice, which is mostly yin yoga, which is passive stretching essentially. But just trying to do some movement when I have the energy is important, especially understanding bodies for so long.
I love so much that, like, I asked, what sorts of management things, what sorts of lifestyle things. And I generally ask this of everybody. And everybody's answers kind of vary a little bit. A lot of it is nutrition, exercise, supplements, which there's absolutely merit to
and
that.
all that for me too. I mean,
Absolutely.
all of it. Yeah.
But I love that the thing you went to first was the people, the animals, the support, the love, the friendship. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize how powerful that kind of support can be and how necessary it can be. Because you've talked about, this can be really lonely, it can be really isolating. And I know so many members of our audience know how that can be and know how that feels. And just having somebody who just is just supportive in whatever capacity they can be, and who is just like, hey, you're having a bad day, I'm still here for you, I still love you, I'm still your friend, even if you're having a bad day, even if you're angry at the world today, like even if you're in a lot of pain today, I'm still here. Like that is so powerful. And
it is.
I think that people don't emphasize it enough when they talk about management and healing. Even if you're not necessarily on a healing journey, if it's just a management journey,
right?
Then I think just having somebody who just, and excuse my language, having somebody who just gives a shit enough to be around and to just say, hey, I'm still here. I don't care that you're going through a thing. I'm still going to be your friend. I'm still going to be your family member. I think that's so important.
And I have heard in different like online support groups and things, like a lot of people don't have that support. They've lost relationships with friends or with family because other people either don't get it, don't want to get it, don't believe it, can't handle it. A lot of people can't handle being in the presence of someone else's suffering without needing or trying to fix it. And if they can't fix it, then it's often one of two things happens. It's either running away, either mentally or like physically, like hightailing it out, and you don't see that person again, or shutting down. It's like one or the other typically. And unfortunately for people with chronic illness, and particularly with brain injury, because it affects every aspect of our lives, including our personality, a lot of people lose people that were in their lives because they are just not able to handle the changes that person has incurred.
And to a certain extent, I think that's understandable, because it's scary, it's heavy, it's different. And not everybody is in a place in their lives where they are ready to handle that kind of support. Maybe they're just not ready to be that kind of friend or family member, which sucks. But everybody, you got to meet people where they're at.
True.
But I just kind of challenge everybody today, if you have a friend, family member, coworker, whatever, who deals with some sort of chronic, debilitating, traumatic anything, send them a text, send them a message. Just be like, hey, I was just thinking of you. Hope you're doing good. Or, hey, haven't talked to you in a while. Just wanted to check in. Like, I guarantee you it will make their day. It will just
it absolutely does.
Huge difference. So if you're listening, if you're watching, please just reach out to somebody today. That would be great. That would make my heart so happy. I would love that.
Oh, I second that. Absolutely. I get so excited when I get a text from a friend. Like it seems so like silly for most people, because so many people, get so many things on their phones. They're just like, no more.
Yeah.
But it's like, I get excited if like, oh yay, I get a text from a friend. It makes my day. It really does. And just letting people know, like, hey, thinking of you, like that's all you got to do.
It's big.
Simple as that.
Sometimes
it
it's
really
just the
huge.
littlest things. that just make
Yeah.
the biggest difference.
Yeah.
All right.
And
Well,
I
we're
never understood. Oh, go ahead.
no, go for it.
Oh, I never really, even though I include talking about support groups in my book, I at that time hadn't been a part of one. So I didn't really fully realize the value of any kind of support group, whether meeting on Zoom, meeting in person, or even just like an online forum. There's a lot of groups in Facebook and things like that. But the value of having a support group, as long as it's a group that helps move you forward in some way. So it doesn't end up being a complete pity party like every single time, but pity parties when they're needed, right?
There's
Because
a
I
time
think
and a place
everyone's
for that.
entitled to that. There is, but that helps people move forward in some way. But man, between a couple of different groups that I'm in, it has been a game changer this last year. So if you don't have that support in your personal life, if people have left you, if you're just isolated, I cannot understate the value or overstate whichever one it is, the value of making those connections, and would highly encourage people to look for any kind of group that meets their needs.
I second that. Absolutely. Where was I going? My own brain fog is kicking in. Okay, there we go. Brain back on track. Sorry.
You're in good company.
I know you get it. Yeah, thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
yes.
I appreciate it. One of the things that I'm really, really excited about, I really want to bring our audience's attention to, you wrote a book. you wrote an amazing book about your experience and about all these other things. Can you tell us kind of what the inspiration for that was and what people can kind of get out of your book?
Sure. The book is called Head of Hope, a resource and empowerment guide for living and thriving with a traumatic brain injury. And it's meant to be just that. I knew, even though I was an educated, health professional, well connected with other professionals, both in allopathic Western medicine and holistic medicine, I certainly knew I didn't know what to do, who to see, what could help, or any of that. And I knew if I didn't know that, and it was that hard for me to figure out what to do after my brain injury, then I knew that the average layperson definitely didn't have any kind of guidance. And there was no place to really find all of that information all in one place. So I took it upon myself to share what I learned from all of it and my experience, including different treatment modalities and things like that I use. I don't bring in anything that I haven't done myself. So all of that's just based on my own personal experience, both as someone going through this and also as someone who's been a licensed health professional for 14 years. So kind of from both lenses. And I think that's kind of a unique perspective going through this, but it's about 100 pages. It's pretty short. And it's meant to just help people figure out what can help them and how to move forward with their new normal, and just creating some kind of roadmap for them. Because when you're given a 2-page handout and said you'll be fine in 2 weeks and then you're not, what are you going to do? So that's what people can take away, is it's creating a very easy to follow kind of roadmap. It's essentially giving you a buffet of things to choose from, just so you know what your options are, especially when it comes to different treatment things. So that's what it is.
I love that so much because I don't know. I've heard you explain the heartbreak of leaving your practice and how important your practice was to you, but you're still serving your community. You're still bringing your expertise and your knowledge and your just all of this experience that you have, and you've created this phenomenal resource that there really wasn't available before. So I feel like even though your life, and correct me if I'm wrong because I don't want to speak for you, I feel like even though your life is so drastically different, you are still helping people and you are still serving in a community and providing really, really necessary resources. And I'm just so moved by that. Like
Thank you.
and I know every day is different and some days are really hard, but I'm so inspired by the work that you have continued to do despite all of the challenges. Like
Oh, thank you.
I'm a fan. I'm a lifelong fan now.
I really
So
appreciate that, because there are days where even in the last like 6 months where I've gone like, what am I doing here? Like, what is my purpose? Right? Because especially in our culture, we're very much of the idea that our worth and our value is based on how productive we are. And
capitalism,
so
baby.
especially with like days where I'm on the couch and I'm like, I didn't do anything today, and then it's like, oh, I don't make a difference in the world. And there are times where I've really kind of stepped back from putting things on social media and blog posts, writing, because I've had to just like take care of me. And I'm like, you know what?
Absolutely.
It's okay. I'll come back when I'm ready. And it can be like little spurts sometimes, but sometimes just hearing that and being validated of like, oh yeah, even when our lives get upturned this much, or maybe even more, or even less, that we still matter and that we still make a difference. And so thank you. I appreciate that. And that goes for everybody, whether you're working or not. It doesn't matter what capacity you're in, but even just sending that text saying, thinking of you, oh my gosh, you make a difference to someone
You really
out
do.
there.
You
And
really
just
do.
one person.
Well, okay, I'm trying. I always tell myself I'm not going to get emotional, and I'm trying. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it this time. I mean, I already failed, so I'm doing what I can. I have two final questions for you.
Sure.
After going through everything that you've been through, the challenges and the wins, how does it feel to be where you're at today?
Great question. I think most of the time feeling pretty proud of how far I've come, albeit times still very frustrated with things, dealing with like pituitary damage, for over 9 years. And it was definitely getting to me yesterday. But, I'm pretty proud of what I have done to keep moving forward. And it took a lot of time and a lot of help to work on coming to terms with all of this and to accept it. And doesn't mean you have to like it all. But there are times where I really wanted to give up. I really wanted to give up. I just didn't want to do it anymore. And I just wanted it to be done. I will say that there are times where there was suicidal ideation, which is also not uncommon. It's fairly normal. And so I want to make sure that people know that like they're not alone with that either. But for not giving up, I think I've always found something that makes me want to keep going. And I'm proud of myself for that, because even when it's been the hardest, I have found something that keeps me going, and I'm still here. And for that, I'm proud.
Thank you. That was really beautiful. I really appreciate your honesty at that. Um, and I think that anyone who's listening who is dealing with something similar will immediately connect with that. And I feel like that's something that more people need to talk about, and just be proud of the progress that you've made, even if your progress was getting out of bed, even if your progress was
Absolutely.
I showered today. Like if
Yeah.
that was a struggle and you did it, you did it.
Woohoo!
You did it,
I know.
man. Get it.
Totally.
Oh. My very last question, which I feel like we've pretty much already answered. What would you say to someone who is maybe at the start of a similar journey to yours?
Mm-hmm. Especially when it comes to traumatic brain injury itself, the thing that I would do differently and would encourage other people to do, if just particularly incurring a concussion, is take it seriously, because it is serious. And I don't think it was emphasized to me how serious it really is. And if it had been, I think that may have changed things a bit for me, especially early on. But, this is serious stuff. brain injuries are no laughing matter unless you're laughing at yourself later on. But, you know, take it seriously is probably the most important thing. And that it's not just this walk it off mentality. It's not about, oh, if I will it, if I have strong enough will, none of this will happen, right? Not the case. So take it seriously. Know that you're not alone, and know that there are things and people out there that can help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jennifer, thank you so much. This has been such a treasure. This has been such a treat. I can't explain how meaningful this has really been for me. And I'm sure how meaningful it is for our audience to hear your story. I think this is really special and really important for people to be more aware of. So thank you so much. Where can people find you online?
Sure. So if for those of you who are interested in learning more about the book or purchasing it, you can do so on my website, which is headofhope.com. Also, there's the blog, and I have videos on YouTube. All of those links are on the website. And if you prefer to be on Instagram, I'm at Head of Hope TBI, and also on Facebook at Facebook.com/Head of Hope TBI as well. So, yep, that's where people can find me. And the book is also available on Amazon. So if you like a Kindle edition, or particularly if you're outside of the United States, then Amazon is going to be your best bet. If you're here in the United States, then paperback copy is at headofhope.com.
Awesome. All right, everybody, you heard it here. If you want any more information from Jennifer or any information about her books, definitely head on over there, and we'll pop a couple links in the description as well. So be sure to check that out. And that wraps up this episode of the Warrior Stories podcast. If you are interested in learning any more about any of our warrior stories, head on over to hakalife.com/podcast. Always have to remember that. And if you or someone you know has a unique health journey that you think needs to be shared with the world, comment down below if you are on YouTube, or shoot us an email at warrior@hakalife.com. Thank you all so much for sticking around. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow, do all the things, and we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.